So I kept trying to write a script about this. And the more I tried to write, the more I was like, you know what? This just needs to be something that I just get on here and talk about, because it's something I'm really passionate about. And it's something that is still kind of developing for me. And so I said, you know what? I just got off my weekend. I'm scruffy. I'm not lined up. And I want to talk about how much I love tape. Honestly feel like this is the sole savior of me coming back to my love of music, as weird as that sounds. When I went full-time with music, see the video I did on glamorizing full-time creative careers, I will link to it here or here. There was this really big moment where I talked about finding my passion again for music and finding my love of experimenting with sound. And tape was the gateway to me falling in love with that again. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. The first thing I can pinpoint for why that is it forces you to just slow down and appreciate the process in a way that doing everything digitally can't. And some people look at that as a big con, as a big mark against an analog technique like tape. But for me, that's exactly what I needed, because everything I do all day when I'm executing on the vision of artists and clients is all about efficiency. It's all about workflow. And when it comes to my own creative endeavors with music, me messing with sounds the way I love to mess with sounds, having something that slows me down, that drops my pace, is absolutely incredible. It just becomes a playground because it lets me, while I'm putting one of my ideas onto tape, think about where it could go next, or start to experiment with kind of the granular hands-on aspect that I could never get digitally. I think another reason that I'm so drawn to tape lately is because there's an element of randomness that is so hard to replicate in a digital workspace. The thing about tape is that every single thing you do is subject to the quality of tape you're using, the quality of machine you're using to record sounds onto tape, and then also the random happenings that can happen on the way back into the DAW. And so you have all these different stages where things can go wrong or turn out differently than you expected. It's almost like having an unhinged co-producer who just doesn't follow the rules, sitting alongside you in the studio the whole time, making choices that they see fit, and you either get to, re-record or roll with the punches and see where it takes you. And I don't know, it's just really special. Like, it's so hard to replicate that kind of, like I said, randomness in the music production process, because everything is so controllable digitally and so easy. And then obviously the biggest pro that everyone thinks about when it comes to tape is the texture, right? It's unbeatable. And yes, it is a very certain aesthetic that maybe doesn't belong in every single genre, but for the type of music that I love and the type of music that I create, it feels incredible. And using something like RC20 to say, like, replicate a tape hiss, it just doesn't feel the same. There's a certain organicness to analog tape hiss that blends into sound, whereas when you're replicating that digitally, and I love RC20, like, I'm a huge fan, and when I would replicate that on something like RC20 before I got into tape, it starts to get annoying. Like, it starts to get on your nerves and it starts to sit on top of the track the whole time. Whereas in an organic setting, a real tape hiss, like, it starts to blend in and create a certain cohesion and atmosphere and things. Not to mention the fact that, again, depending on what type of machine you record on, you can either get very high fidelity results or very, very, very lo-fi results. So I want to show you guys a couple of the things I'm using to work with tape and just share what I like about each one. Hopefully, if you're on the edge of thinking about getting into something like tape, it'll be that thing that pushes you over the edge. What I think is so cool is that even though I have something like the reel-to-reel behind me, which I'm very lucky to have, and that was such a huge, like, unexpected thing to come into my process, cassettes are really affordable to get into. It's very accessible, and it's not like the world of this tape that's very, like, highbrow and expensive and hard to take care of. Like, cassette players are something that are very easily accessible, really affordable, and really fun to mess with. So let me show you some of the stuff that I've been using and experimenting with. So this guy right here is the machine that got me into cassettes, and it is the Panasonic RR830, and what it was made for is speech transcribing. So it has some settings on here that I will show you guys that are really, really cool to mess with. Okay, so the cool settings I was talking about on here are that it has something called variable speech control. And because it was made for transcribing voices, sometimes they would want to play the voices faster while still being able to like hear what's going on and preserve the pitch. So you have the, if it's off, it just is obviously the sample. And then when you turn variable speech control on, you get full pitch modulation. Which is sick. But then if you turn this variable speech control level on, it tries to preserve the pitch while speeding it up using something called a bucket brigade. And it's like this really granular sound that can be really, really dope in some applications, especially on something like drums. It's like the applications for that creatively are just really fun and cool and unique. It also has like a EQ tone control on it. So like filtering out highs, lows. The other thing that's cool though is it comes with this pedal that is for when they would be typing, they would have this underneath their feet to be going back and forth. So you can almost do like this live looping kind of thing, which I'm terrible at, but it has something called backspace control, which basically controls when you let go of this button, how far it will rewind. So if I play, when I hold this, it plays. And you can like loop things that way and you hear it rewinding in real time. And anyway, so really fun, like cool little device. Again, like $35 for this thing. It's not expensive. And it was so much fun to get this and have this be my like introduction into tape. And I love it, and I use it all the time. I probably use this more than I use my reel-to-reel, more than I use this shoebox here. It's really, really, really dope. So the second machine that I got and my standard workflow is I actually go onto the cassette out of like my headphone port here. And this machine is also a mono machine. It's just like a basic like Radio Shack shoebox cassette player. And the reason I typically onto the cassette on this one as opposed to this one is so old and so lo-fi that it puts a ton of noise onto the tape. Whereas this one puts a bit less and records a little cleaner with still getting some of that lo-fi. So typically if I go onto the cassette here, that's exclusively what I use this one for. I don't really use this for recording off of because it's not all that interesting. And then I come off of the cassette into the DAW from this machine here when I want that really, really like lo-fi feel, or when I want to mess with the variable speech control or tone control or anything like that. That's my typical workflow. The other thing that I have that I just absolutely love is this guy down here is the Pioneer Model CTF7272, and this is much more of like a hi-fi grade cassette deck. It's nothing crazy, it's like a midline, but what's really, really cool about this is it gives me some of the cassette feel while maintaining a certain level of high fidelity that I need, especially on a lot of like client projects when I need some of that feel, some of that hiss, some of that little bit of warping, but then I still want something that has a high fidelity element. And with that guy, I can run things into there and then run them back into the computer and affect them digitally from there and still maintain that like stereo sound and things like that. And then last but not least, this is my TEAC AA6010. This is again like a midline to low end, probably reel to reel tape machine, and it's just 2 channels, so just a stereo machine. And this I use primarily for actually very, very lo-fi feel. Now the reason being is that all I have so far for this is a huge box of really, really, really old grubby tape from my grandparents, which I inherited that from, and it was all sitting in a root cellar for like 50 plus years, so it's like degrading and old, and I have not taken the time to get really, really nice tape for it. So what I did here was I actually just made a little beat, ran the entire beat through each of my different tape setups that I was showing you earlier. And so I'll show you one by one kind of how they sound in the context of everything else done digitally. So here's the full thing on digital. And then here's that same snippet on the Panasonic. Here's that same snippet on the Pioneer. Here's that same snippet on the TIAC. Yeah, so really interesting stuff going on. Like I said, I typically use it for more of this kind of vibe, like these running individual elements through to then be in the middle of more elements. A lot of times I run stuff like this through it. Like that would have a really nice feel through it. Stuff like these guitars. Yeah, so if you guys want more of a breakdown of this kind of thing, please let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to go more in depth. But yeah, that's just kind of like a basic overview of some of the character that it adds. And yeah, it's really fun. I don't know. I'm really, really loving it. So I think if there's any like purpose or goal to this video, it's really just to say that if there's something you're thinking about playing with, if there's a sound that inspires you, or if there's an element or piece of gear that will creatively push you to a different headspace, you should absolutely go for it. And what cassettes have been to me, what tape has been to me, is something that pushes me to a different creative space that I would never have entered into otherwise. And that for me is invaluable, right? Like creative inspiration, even though it's not, it's something that can feel very finite and hard to come by. And so anything that I can put into my process that is a source of creative inspiration rather than something that I am just shoving creative inspiration into to get the sounds I need, that like gives creative inspiration back to me, is such a worthwhile investment. And like I said, even, you know, with cassettes, how affordable and easy they are to get into, I think it's something that is just like a huge, huge benefit to the creative process and to my creative process personally. And I'm sure to many of you out there, if you get into it, you'll find the same thing for yourself. If you have experience with something like this in your production process, in your creative process, I would love to hear about it, because it's, like I said, it's just been really, really inspiring to me, and I'm sure that many of you have had a similar experience. So thanks for watching this. I know it's a little different than what I normally do, but please like and subscribe if it was helpful or inspiring in any way to you, or even if you just enjoyed it and you're also a fellow tape lover, please let me know down below. I would love to hear from you. Please drop links to your music always. I would love to listen to what you guys are doing. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Keep working to understand the music you make, because when we understand the music we make better music. So have a great day, guys.